It's 14 hours.
North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. Welcome to the broadcast. Good to have you here today. It's Friday. Yeah, it is Friday. I hope you worked as hard as I have this week. I hope it has been as satisfying and as informative as my week has been, because I got to tell you, this has been an amazing week, an absolutely amazing week. We are waiting for the President of the United States. He is apparently going to he's going to talk. He's in Los Angeles right now, specifically at the Port of Los Angeles, and I'm double checking to make sure that this is still going on. This was something that was that we were working on here. Let me see. As you can tell, that's the Port of Los Angeles, which, according to most experts, is one of the reasons why we have such bad supply chain issues. This thing starts in 3, 2, 1, and go. Hello. You're not going to believe this. I'm having a little technical difficulty.
You're the guy with the gun, the person who'd do anything to protect the ones you love.
Yes.
But did you know that you could go?
Yes, indeed. I know that. Okay, so anyway, the president may or may not be speaking. We may or may not be able to do that, but we are going to cover inflation because it just hit a 40-year high. And that's bad. Not only is it bad, it's horrendously bad and horribly terrible. And indeed, we are going to have to watch to see what happened. There are some very, very disturbing things being said about inflation in the United States. Speaking of saying disturbing things, the Select Committee for the January 6th incursion into the Capitol building had their big primetime propaganda feast. The Lenny Riefenstahl-esque mess last night hit the air. It was sanctimony. It was one-sided. It was essentially a propaganda piece, just like I told you. Exactly what I said it was going to be. That is exactly what it was. And I got to be honest with you, I think the Democrats are hurting themselves with every single attempt that they make to try to destroy a person who 74 million Americans voted for in the 2020 election. They are infuriating 74 million people. And it's getting worse every day. Now, you know how I feel about this, and I routinely excoriate people who do biased news. And I have to admit, in this particular case, I am so disgusted by this abuse of congressional power that I'm having trouble maintaining maintaining my poise on this thing. I've never seen anything like this. As a matter of fact, this particular committee has broken over 230 years worth of committee traditions in the United States House of Representatives. This is not a committee. This is a lynch mob. And they are trying to lynch former President Donald Trump. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as objectively as possible, get through this. But you have to understand in the background of what I'm about to tell you from USA Today and from Fox News and so on, CNN, what I'm going to tell you today is anti-American. It is an attack, and in the clever way of subversive people around the world in the human existence. What you do is you accuse your enemy of what you yourself are doing. And what we are seeing is this committee doing its absolute dead level best to destroy democracy. All the while accusing the object of their quote unquote investigation of trying to destroy democracy. All this is a redo of the failed second Donald Trump impeachment. The same people saying the same things, making a mockery out of not just themselves, but the actual impeachment process, the actual committee process, all of the things that the House of Representatives, the enumerated powers of the House of Representatives in the Constitution, they are making a mockery out of all of it. It has quite literally become a kangaroo court. There is no give and take. There's no adversarial discussion. There is no cross-examination. There is nothing. All this is a very well-produced, I guess. It wasn't the best-produced thing I've seen on television. You know, I'm kind of surprised that a former ABC News executive can't do a better job. But that being said, it was the worst reality television I've ever seen, especially when reality television is built around preposterous plots, trying to solve totally irrelevant problems with as much artificial and injected drama as they possibly can. And that is exactly how you can describe what happened last night. So this is the best I'm going to be able to do. Susan Page writes for USA Today. She starts melodramatically, Donald Trump knew. An extraordinary hearing last Thursday night, the House committee investigating the January 6th assault on the Capitol made the case that President Trump was told by his own top officials that he had lost the 2020 election. We knew that. That he deliberately spread misinformation arguing the election had been rigged even after his own daughter had accepted it wasn't true. That he was determined to hold on to power even though he knew his defiance might lead to violence, perhaps inevitably so. The panel made its case using Republican voices ranging from an attorney general Trump had appointed to his supporters his words had drawn into Washington to demonstrate. Unprecedented seems too small a word. Okay, let me try to get to some of the news here. This is more of the same. This is more of what we saw yesterday, which was essentially just a constant melodramatic assault on President Trump and his supposed thinking. Let me see if I can find a. It's going to be hard. Let me see if I can find an actual objective piece of news. Let me try something else. Let me go over here. I usually use USA Today because of the left biased news. They are the least left biased. Let me see what I can do here. All right, here's the CNN. This is more objective, which is hard to say about CNN, but the actual website is not nearly as bad as the network. The network's a joke. The House Select Committee investigating January 6, 2021 U.S. Capitol attack held its first primetime hearing last night, detailing the findings of the panel's investigation, playing new video from closed-door depositions of members of former President Donald Trump's team, and depicting the violence at the Capitol. Thursday's hearing was the first in a series this month that will highlight the findings of the panel's investigation, which included interviews from more than 1,000 people about how President Trump and his team tried to overturn the results of the 2020 election on multiple fronts. Now, this is biased, okay? Because what they are saying is that Donald Trump was trying to overturn the election. What Donald Trump was trying to do was to find out whether the election was honest. Okay? And the fact that all of that effort was turned aside should be beyond illuminating to you. It should be beyond illuminating that President Trump and other people in the nation tried to investigate these elections and got absolutely nowhere. What happens when you don't investigate an election, or for that matter, don't invest anything, what ends up happening is you don't actually find out whether or not there was a problem. So without an investigation, saying that Donald Trump was trying to overturn the election is supposition. This is the analysis. This is the analysis. And what you have to do is you have to work through this bias. Let's get to the facts. It was the first in a series of hearings this month that will highlight the findings of the panel's investigation, included interviews with more than 1,000 people. Let's see, that's the fact. Many details have been reported on CNN and other media outlets. The committee's hearings will tell the story of the American people. That's actually old copy that they didn't update on this particular thing. Here we go. The committee played a compilation of some of the most disturbing video of the January 6th attack. They included some never-before-seen material, including bird's-eye view footage from security cameras showing the enormous pro-Trump mob as it started swarming the Capitol grounds, about 15,000 people. The footage also showed how the crowd took its cues directly from President Trump, with one rioter reading a Trump tweet on a megaphone for the other rioters to hear. I believe that was Alex Jones. In that tweet, Trump criticized Pence for announcing he would not overturn the results of the 2020 election while presiding over the joint session of Congress to certify Joe Biden's win. After that moment, the committee's montage showed a now infamous clip of Trump supporters chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." They then showed a photograph of a makeshift noose and gallows the rioters erected near the Capitol, as well as a haunting clip of other rioters shouting "Nancy, Nancy" as they converged on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. These clips immediately harken back to the horrors of January 6th, which can easily get lost amid the partisan bickering over the committee and its investigation. But underneath the probe, there was a violent and deadly attack that injured more than 140 police officers and led to several deaths. The visceral footage served as a frightening reminder, of a dark day in U.S. history. I've got a couple of things that I have to point out. All right, I have to point out a couple of things here. All right. Thing number one. Never before seen material, etc. What it starts with is this. The committee played a compilation of some of the most disturbing footage from the January 6th attack. That's edited footage. I happen to know for a fact, because I was on the phone with somebody who was there at the time, there were also a lot of very patriotic things said by a lot of very patriotic people. None of that made that compilation. If you're going to do an investigation, if you're going to have a hearing, what you need to do is you need to hear all sides. Doesn't that make sense? There were a lot of patriotic things that happened on January 6th at the Capitol. There were a lot of stupid things that happened on the Capitol grounds. There were heroic things that happened on the Capitol grounds. All of them need to be seen. But a decidedly and calculated compilation or edited group of video images is designed to do one thing, and that's be inflammatory. You can't just cherry pick whatever video you happen to be able to find for the sake of your political argument. That's thing number one. It also showed what, if it had been a Black Lives Matter rally, a mostly peaceful protest. It was mostly peaceful. For example, during the BLM protests, people lost their lives at the hands of the mob. People lost their lives at the hands of the mob. In the January 6th incursion, no one lost their lives at the hands of the mob. Were people injured? Sure. A minuscule number of people in comparison to the Black Lives Matter riots. There's more. We'll bring it to you. The self-serving, melodramatic, damaging in a way the Democrats refuse to consider hearing against the former president of the United States, Donald Trump. They're not trying to get to the bottom of the January 6th attack. They're trying to get Donald Trump thrown in jail. And I'm not the only one saying that. You are listening to The Wells Report. Back in a moment. Arthur, people should listen to the testimony of Trump's inner circle. Correct. What testimony? What part of the inner circle? The committee last night, and you heard it right here, I just said it a moment ago, started with a compilation of the most disturbing footage. In other words, all this is edited. That means everything they listened to in Trump's inner circle was edited. You didn't see everything. You didn't see anything exculpatory in any of those interviews at all, period. And yes, people should listen to the testimony of Trump's inner circle. Yeah, it would be really, really nice if we actually had it. But we only have part of it. Horrors. Yes. Horrors. Yes. Horrors. 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 Yes, completely correct, Arthur. Completely correct. Before you decide, wait for all the information. But we don't have that. This is a partisan witch hunt. We do need all the information, but that's not where we're getting. It's simply not. I haven't decided. Like I said, we don't know. But at the end of all of this, we still won't know because it's not a fair process. Not a fair process. You are listening to the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us. If you are watching the video stream, by all means, like it. Hit the like button. Would be very happy. It would help us immeasurably. Go ahead and share this broadcast with your friends. Then, by all means, make sure you ring the bell so that when you see us or hear us come on the air, or when we do come on the air, you will know about it so that you can do the first two steps over and over and over again. This is a show where we broadcast the news, even when it's not news. Like last night's so-called committee hearing. It was half a hearing, and that is all. You know, the House committee process is really quite good. It really is. You get both political parties to contribute members, and on any particular issue, there is a back and forth. I even happen to believe that the party with the most power in Washington, D.C., I think they should have more people on the committee. One more. And I also happen to think that they should be able to call more witnesses. But not that many more. But that's not what happened here. That's not what's happening here. The House Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy of California, submitted names to be put on this committee, and all of them were turned aside. Except for decidedly anti-Trump Liz Cheney and emotionally overwrought and essentially anti-Trump obsessed Adam Kinzinger. I don't even know why she bothered picking any Republican for that. I don't have any idea. I don't know. Why not just make it partisan? That's what the committee's work is anyway. The committee revealed testimony from Trump White House officials who said the former president did not want the U.S. Capitol attack to stop, angrily resisted his own advisors who were urging him to call off the rioters, and thought his own vice president deserved to be hanged. It also offers a new window into Trump's demeanor during the riot, something the committee has repeatedly suggested would be a key part of public hearings. Vice Chair Liz Cheney described testimony from a witness who said Trump was aware of chants to hang Mike Pence. Aware of the rioters' chants to hang Mike Pence, the president responded with this sentiment, quote, "Maybe our supporters have the right idea. Mike Pence deserves it," unquote. Cheney has previously characterized Trump's inaction on January 6th in those 187 minutes as a dereliction of duty. You know, dereliction of duty. Yeah. Sort of like what happened during the Benghazi blowaway, where boy, I knew I should have brought that up, where the former ambassador to Libya was killed. The committee introduced the American public to two of the most militant far-right extremist groups in the country, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. These groups were the vanguard of the riot. They were among the first to breach the building. They're accused of planning violence. Documentary filmmaker Nick Quested, who testified yesterday, said he was with the Proud Boys when they converged on the Capitol before Trump's speech, showing they weren't interested in the rally. They were eyeing the Capitol. So in other words, President Trump didn't speak to those guys because they weren't there at the rally. Oh, I see. Thompson said Cheney sought to link Trump directly to the extremists, kind of hard to do since they were in two separate locations, including his comment during a September 2020 debate, the Proud Boys should stand back and stand by. I dealt with that here when I was talking about both the Seattle and the Portland police during the BLM riots, because that's exactly what the mayors of both those cities, and others I'm sure, told their police forces. Okay? Stand back and stand by. In other words, back off and don't do anything. Why is that significant? Why is that significant? Federal prosecutors at the Justice Department have charged 17 members of the groups with seditious conspiracy, an extremely serious allegation that the committee highlighted yesterday. Okay, it's an allegation. Have we had any trials yet? By the way, seditious conspiracy is almost impossible to prove. It absolutely is. I suppose you can prove it by saying, well, we had somebody in the conversations. Really? Were they encouraging? Were they encouraging, say, for example, some seditious action? In other words, if you had FBI informants in those groups, were they suggesting that maybe we should do something? The answer, of course, to that is yes. It's already been proven so. There were FBI informants within the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. Were they just sitting around taking notes? Or were they taking part? They were undercover. What were they doing there? I wonder. Yeah, so in other words, yeah, you can arrest anybody you want. You can charge them with anything you want. But by golly, you're going to have to prove it. And they better be successful or it's going to get mighty expensive. That false arrest thing is really, really expensive. So in other words, now we're talking about incomplete stories. Now what we're doing is we're casting aspersions on the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. By the way, before January 6th, did you actually hear of any violent actions being taken by either of those groups? I know they were accused of taking violent actions, but do you actually know of any? Do you know of any violent actions taken by, oh, I don't know, Black Lives Matter? Oh, wait, yeah. Yeah, you've got all kinds of those things, yeah. Once again, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on anyone here. I'm just making my observations. Observations that should have been handled well before the January 6th Select Committee on the January 6th incursion to the Capitol decided to go with their ill-advised and ill-fated whatever that was last night. There's more. We will continue speaking about it as we continue here on the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us today. Make sure you join in and text away, will you? I'll be back in a moment. What terrestrial radio station is this one now? I don't have a terrestrial radio station right now. I'm trying to get in touch with one, however. Let me see if I can do that. Yeah, no affiliate these days. No affiliate these days. Yeah, we'll get one. One of these days, we'll be back on the air. One of these days, we'll be back on the air. I'm sure of it. Hello from Oklahoma. Oh, that's so funny. That is so funny. Oh, so cute. That truly is great. That is fantastic. Let's see here. Let me see if I can figure this out. Okay. Let me just put that right over there. Those darn short horns. Congratulations, Kelly. Well done. 14 seconds. Back to work. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is still on the way. I actually know what it is. I know what our telephone number is going to be. It will be 817 379 2072. Okay, write that down. Kelly Lyons just got in touch with us. She works at the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. She's a dear friend of not just the Wells Report. No, Kelly, it's not going to be BR 549. Okay, no, that's not the new telephone number of the Wells Report. But good try. No. Kelly Lyons has known me since, I guess, the early 80s. She and I have been friends forever. And when I started doing the Wells Report, for some reason, she ran across my name again, and then we picked up right where we left off. It was 1982 when we met. Yeah. Well, actually, it was earlier than that because we got the... My first marriage was 1982, so it was probably earlier than 1982, 1981, I think. Anyway, that being said, Kelly Lyons is a vehement, enthusiastic, obsessed Oklahoma Sooners fan. And if you have been watching anything having to do with the Oklahoma Sooners, you will know that the female or the softball team, which is female, just won back-to-back national championships. And oh, by the way, they beat Texas. Yeah. So there you go. So congratulations. And I said, congratulations, Kelly. And then she said, I didn't have anything to do with the wins, but yell herself off for them. Yes, I know. So what's next for this January 6th thing? Let's move on. Either you thought it was the most important thing you ever saw from a standpoint of political reality, quote unquote, reality television, or you thought it was a damaging act of desperate politicians, which is what I think. And we can both have our points of view, and we can agree to disagree, et cetera, et cetera. But that's whatever that is that's fine. What's going on? What's happening next? In a primetime hearing, the January 6th committee investigating the Capitol attack described a sprawling multi-step conspiracy spearheaded by former President Donald Trump that aimed to subvert a democratic election, and stop the peaceful transfer of power from one president to the next. This is according to USA Today. The only thing I can say on this is, remember, when the FBI or an actual federal law enforcement agency discusses conspiracy, that's a very serious deal. When politicians discuss it, it is a word used for effect, which tells you something about politics in the first place. The word conspiracy had actually, if Donald Trump had been guilty of a conspiracy, and had there actually been a federal investigation by the FBI or whomever, then there'd be a lot of people sitting in jail. Since that didn't happen and won't ever happen because there is no probable cause to believe it happened, the committee is going back and searching through the debris of what happened on January 6th, rummaging through the Trump presidency, the Trump administration. And remember, President Trump was surrounded by a lot of people trying to sabotage his presidency. Okay? They're still trying to sabotage his presidency. The common denominator in all of this is politicians. What people are losing in this is that Donald Trump was elected by the people of the United States in 2016. The people of the United States chose a non-politician. And what does that mean? Well, that means that politicians had a real good shaking up. And what they did was they said, whoa. We better get our crap together because we're being replaced by non-politicians. And that needs to happen more often, not less often. I am imploring you to vote for your neighbors. I don't care if they're Democrats. I don't care if they're Republicans. I don't care. But don't vote for politicians anymore. They're destroying the nation. And you saw a very great example of that last night at the hands of the Select Committee to attempt to overturn the Electoral College and get Donald Trump thrown in jail. Here's what's going on. Let me get back to the news here. The committee will present more evidence when it meets 3 times next week, part of a series of 8 hearings on its findings. The next scheduled hearing is Monday at 10 a.m. The remaining 4 hearings have not been scheduled. Monday at 10 a.m., Wednesday at 10 a.m., Thursday at 1 p.m. Strangely, there are no more primetime hearings to be had. Do you know why? Because this one was a mistake. Last night's hearing was marked by harrowing testimony. It sure was. Capitol Police officer who survived the attack, and details from former Trump officials, because one of the great things about this particular committee was they were able to pierce executive privilege. And what they are doing is they are publicizing private conversations in the Oval Office with the President of the United States and his advisors. Now, I'm not a big believer in tit for tat, but when Republicans take charge, I suggest what they do is they start investigating the presidency of Joe Biden. And armed with these new precedents, armed with the capability of being able to go into the Oval Office and compel testimony between the president and his advisors, imagine what advisors were saying to and from and getting back from President Biden. And also imagine what those advisors were saying to each other about Joe Biden. Do we want to splatter that all over the United States and all over national television in a live primetime destruction fest? The answer, of course, is no. In fact, any sane politician would never do something like that. But these aren't sane politicians. Arguably, considering the anti-Americanism of all of this, they're not even American politicians. They're a lynch mob trying to change America for political purposes, and it's awful. So that's what's going on. Monday at 10, Wednesday at 10, Thursday at 1. What can you expect? Though there's still much unknown about what the next January 6th hearings may reveal, Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming laid out a loose framework. Cheney said the Monday hearing will focus on the fact that former President Donald Trump knew he had lost the election, but despite that, engaged in a massive effort to spread false and fraudulent information. On Wednesday, Cheney said viewers will learn the senior leadership in the Department of Justice and White House threatened to resign, confronting Trump in the Oval Office. And Thursday's hearing will revolve around the former president's effort to pressure former Vice President Mike Pence to overturn the election. Okay. Let's go back through those one by one. Liz Cheney said the Monday hearing will focus on the fact that former President Donald Trump knew he had lost the election. How does she know that? How does she know that? That's a supposition. I don't believe he ever thought he lost the election. I don't believe he thinks he's lost the election now. I think what he believes is that there was widespread voter fraud and electioneering that went on from one end of the country to the other, specifically in 5 swing states, in the 2020 election. That's what I believe he believes. So how can Liz Cheney say that it's a fact that former President Donald Trump knew he had lost the election? That's a false statement, a false predicate. And then, having established the predicate that he knew he'd lost the election, he went on for a massive effort to spread false and fraudulent information. Or his opinion about having the election stolen from him. Once again, you can throw all this stuff out there in a political sense, but when it comes right down to trying to prove your point, you got to have facts. And Liz Cheney doesn't. Or the committee. They just have a lot of supposition. They've got a lot of smoke. And since they're not actually having a trial, they're not actually following jurisprudence, they can say anything they want. Wednesday, Cheney said that viewers will learn that senior leadership of the Department of Justice and White House threatened to resign, confronting Trump in the Oval Office. Okay. That's probably happened before, and it will happen again. So when Republicans take over the next time, whatever that is, let's go back into the vice president of Kamala Harris and having their staff not just threaten to resign, but actually resign. Let's go ahead and find out what that's all about. Let's go ahead and subpoena all the text and all the emails of Kamala Harris losing her staff twice at this point. Let's go get all that stuff and let's put all that stuff out there. Let's put all of that stuff in a nice, lavish primetime hearing. What do you say? Yeah, let's just tear the American experience down to its quivering flesh and then set it aflame. What do you say? The Thursday hearing will revolve around the former president's effort to pressure former Vice President Mike Pence to overturn the election. Mike Pence knew what he had to do. His job was to oversee the Senate, and he did. Whether he was pressured by President Trump to overturn the election or not is moot. That process has nothing to do with the presidency. It goes on regardless. Just as it did, by the way. So once again, all of this is supposition. All this stuff is, okay, this is whatever it is. Now, this is not me being partisan at all. No, the people that are being partisan rather. Let's start with President Trump. Let's report what he had to say. Okay? Former President Trump slammed the House Select Committee on January 6th in its primetime hearing as totally partisan while taking a swipe to undercut his daughter, Ivanka Trump's testimony, saying she accepted then-attorney Bill Barr's conclusion that the 2020 presidential election was not stolen. Trump, posting on Truth Social, called the committee hearing last night a one-sided, totally partisan political witch hunt. Lawmakers on the January 6th committee said that President Trump spurred a mob of domestic enemies to attack the Capitol in an effort to subvert American democracy to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Lawmakers on the committee presented videos of interviews and depositions with former top Trump officials before the Select Committee, including one from Attorney General Bill Barr and his daughter, Ivanka Trump. Barr had said he had 3 discussions with Trump between Election Day and his early resignation from the Trump administration in December of 2020. I made it clear that I did not, now remember, these are excerpts, okay? I made it clear I did not agree with the idea the election was stolen, which I told the president was BS. And I didn't want to be a part of it. And that's one of the reasons that went into me deciding to leave when I did. Okay, now, that's fine. That's fine. That's a reasoned idea. And so on. But what I want you to understand is that, okay, he's entitled to his own opinion. He said, you can't live in a world where the incumbent administration stays in power based on its view, unsupported by specific evidence, that there was fraud in the election. Well, okay, but we don't know whether there was fraud in the election because nobody was allowed to investigate it. He's the Attorney General. And remember, Bill Barr is an old Washington hand. In other words, he has been in service of politics his whole life. Remember that Donald Trump was a challenge to that political dominance of Washington, D.C. It was not just in his best interests to not necessarily help President Trump. It was not just in his best interest. It was, at that time, it was also in his best interest both for the future and the past. Those people are as thick as thieves in there. And we know, by the way, and don't get all upset because I called politicians thieves. Okay, we're $28.8 trillion in national debt. Okay? If that's not thievery, what is it? Anyway, that being said, Bill Barr is one of the guys that arguably tried to sabotage President Trump. This gives him an opportunity to be able to, in a way that is credible and straightforward, this gives him a way to sanitize his dealings with President Trump from a political standpoint. It is a smart political play. I wonder what else he said to President Trump. Well, once again, we just don't know. Committee Vice Chair Liz Cheney also presented video testimony from Ivanka Trump on AG Barr's statement that the Justice Department found, quote, no fraud sufficient to overturn the election. During the video, Ivanka Trump was asked how AG Barr's statement affected her perspective of the election. She said, it affected my perspective. I respect Attorney General Barr, so I accepted what he was saying. Okay. Trump, taking aim at his daughter on Truth Social, said she was not involved in looking at or studying election results. She had long since checked out and was, in my opinion, only trying to be respectful to Bill Barr in his position as Attorney General. By the way, Trump said he sucked. All right. Once again, I'm just bringing you the news. Okay? Let's see who else had to talk. Well, let's see. Jim Jordan had something to say. Also, Jim Banks, both Republicans from Ohio and Indiana, respectively. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up in just a couple of seconds. Last night's very unfortunate propaganda piece perpetrated on the nation by the Select Committee on the events of January 6th. That's what happened last night. And what we're doing is we are going through the details. We're going through all of it. If you have a comment, by all means, make it. You can text us anytime you choose. Back with more of the Wells Report in a moment. Okay, so I have a problem on this clock. Okay, so what have I done here? What's next? Rejoin. And then, okay. So 5850. Okay. Let's see. Segments. 550. Wait. Let's see. 14. 5. Let's see. 6. 4. 5. 16. 3. 550. 110. Okay. So that becomes back to work. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2072. Don't try to call it. And the reason I'm telling you not to call it is because it's not hooked up yet. Yeah, I was talking to Frontier. I actually got through to somebody at Frontier Communications. Yeah, and theoretically on the 13th, which I believe will be Monday. Let's see, tomorrow's the 11th, Sunday 12th. Yep, Monday. The telephone lines ought to be working. Cross your fingies. And then you'll be able to call, and we'll have a wonderful little fest about whether or not who's going to be the first phone call that I take on the air. I'll have all that stuff set up, and we'll take good care of it, I promise. So let's talk a little bit about some of the some of the responses to what we've seen. Okay. Jim Jordan of Ohio had something to say to this. And I'm basically the same thing I'm going to do with President Trump. You know, I think President Trump, was ill-served by a lot of people who theoretically testified against him. And once again, in a totally partisan circumstance, none of this matters. It's irrelevant because the process is flawed to begin with. What they should have done is they should have invited President Trump to testify. And that way, people could have actually questioned him on both sides. He could tell his story. And I really wish that had happened. Jim Jordan joined Fox News. He joined today to argue the January 6th committee is a partisan production and said the American people are more focused on what they can afford with their paychecks as inflation continues to soar. More about that, by the way, next hour here on the Wells Report. The majority party gets more members on the committee. That's good. They get more witnesses. That's good. The minority party always gets a chance to bring in a witness or cross-examine the witnesses that the majority brings in, which is also good. Except in this committee. Jim Jordan said this is worse than what Adam Schiff did with the 2019 impeachment in the bunker in the basement of the Capitol, because at least we got to be in the room and depose the witnesses. And then when they had hearings, at least we got to cross-examine the witnesses. That's not happening here. And it is just a production, selectively pulling out information that we get no chance to see, presented to the American people in a completely partisan way. And again, you just went through how bad inflation is, 41-year high, and he's trying to obfuscate and change the subject. Okay? So that's what I'll say about that. All right? Representative James Banks said the following. He said the January 6th committee is focused on prosecuting Donald Trump for crimes he did not commit. Last night's hearing was a primetime dud. Nothing came out of it that we didn't know before. It didn't change anybody's minds. At the end of the day, this committee is trying to prosecute Donald Trump for crimes he did not commit. Last night proved they don't have any evidence that shows anything that's different than that. They want to put down Trump. They want to throw Donald Trump in jail. If they can't get that done, they want to prevent his name from appearing on the ballot. They want to continue to use the committee process in a way to attack their political opponents. But we learned from their reports over the weekend that this committee is actually going to come out and recommend abolishing the Electoral College and to advance the radical election agenda of Democrats, to nationalize and federalize elections, to move all states towards mail-in ballots. That's what this committee is really all about. It's not about investigating January 6th. He might be right. He might be right. But remember, this is all partisan. This is all a partisan response. You see, there's a term in computing, garbage in, garbage out. In other words, if your software is flawed, the conclusions of your software will be flawed. And that's a bad thing. That is a bad thing. And so when you're in a position where there is flawed processes afoot, then no one is served, except, of course, the self-serving Democrats on this committee. What they should have done is done a completely fair, scrupulously fair process. And then actually get to the bottom of all of this. They've had 18 months. They should have gotten to the bottom of all of this. But the Trump administration was so poisoned by politics. Politics, just mean-spirited, destructive politics on the left, and ulterior sabotaging politics on the right. Does there need to be an investigation of the Trump administration? You bet there does. There absolutely does. What needs to happen is that people that tried to do everything they possibly could to obstruct and damage the Trump presidency ought to be held accountable. And oh, by the way, the supposed Republicans, the supposed allies of President Trump that did their best to sabotage the Trump presidency, they should be held to account. And regardless of anything else that you hear me say, what I will tell you about this broadcast and my point of view is we should hold all politicians accountable. We should start over with our neighbors. That reset is the one that's American, as opposed to some totalitarian mess that they're trying to foist on us from Washington, D.C. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. Okay, I got what I did wrong. I'll be right back. Oh, it was early. Let's see. Helping us, the customer. They're a joke. Chris Wallace said they didn't, according to Anhoy Guzman, Chris Wallace said that they didn't present anything new. It's a redo of the second impeachment. Howdy, Jay Randall. How are you, boy? North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. It's Friday. Yay. Yeah. Was your work week as tough as mine? I mean, this was a hard week. This is a tough week, man. Because, the production of this show is not easy. It takes me hours to bring up the news that I have and read everything and be able to discuss it. Okay? But that's not the rest of it. I work in the studio the rest of the time. It's like, seriously? Oh man. This has been hard, and it's going to be this way for a while. I mean, I gotta hang lights over there. Okay, I gotta put a television studio over there. I gotta finish up all this. I gotta put equipment in over here. I don't do this stuff. I'm a DJ. Okay, well, I'm not actually a talk show host now, a newsman, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I do. My job is to walk into a studio that's already built. This is the work those guys do, the engineers. Oh my. I've always admired the engineers that made these shows of mine possible. I always have. But I got to be perfectly honest with you, this is tough. Their job is tough. And I've always been, like I said, I've always been incredibly respectful of those guys. But this is even bigger than that. It's just, I'm just very, very impressed with all those studios that have been built for all those years that I've worked so hard in. And I doing it myself. Oh my. So let's get back to the broadcast, shall we? We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact. We present the facts, drawing conclusions, or not conclusions, but certainly contrast between the news and the facts, which is disturbing. I make commentary, and then we debate. That's what this show's all about, okay? And so by all means, take part in it as best you can. We will have, I think next week, we will have a telephone that you can call and use, and I'll have that for you coming up, okay? Don Pepper is new. Hey, Don, welcome to the broadcast. Let's see, listening in Montana. Donnie, when I want you to make sure you listen next week. Okay, I want you to make sure. Like the page that you're watching on, no matter where it is. Let's see, you're listening in Facebook. You're on Facebook. Okay. Like the page, share the page with your buddies, and pass the word up there. Montana's beautiful. I've been there. I love your state. Not as much as Texas, because I love Texan. I love Texas. But Montana's wonderful. And thanks very much for checking in today. Appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit about the economy. U.S. consumer inflation. U.S. consumer inflation reached its highest level in more than 4 decades. Surging energy and food costs pushed prices higher, little indication of when the upward trend could ease. The Labor Department said today the Consumer Price Index increased 8.6% in May from the same month a year ago, marking its fastest pace since December of 1981. That was also up from April's Consumer Price Index, which was slightly below the previous 40-year high reached in March. The CPI measures, the Consumer Price Index measures what consumers pay for goods and services. May's increase was driven in part by sharp rises in the price for energy, which rose 34.6% from a year earlier. 34.6%. Groceries jumped 11.9%, the biggest increase since 1979. Inflation pressures were distinctly broad-based in May, this according to Sarah House, the senior economist at Wells Fargo Securities. Given everything from the implications of the Russian invasion in the Ukraine, the Chinese lockdowns, and the sheer appetite for travel, what we've seen is a perfect storm of those factors hitting, along with major refinery closures. Inflationary pressures were seen nearly everywhere. The refinery closures, why are they closing refineries? No oil to refine. That's why. America went from a net exporter of energy, in other words, The United States met all of its energy needs with so much to spare, we started exporting it to other countries. That all came to a stop with the end of the Trump administration. And that's why gasoline prices are going through the roof right now. Going through the roof. I refuse to believe two things being said: that Russian oil and gas puts inflationary pressure on American energy costs here in our country. That's thing number one. And thing number two, the idea that oil is an international market completely forgets the fact that, okay, you do not have to truck West Texas crude all the way around the world to get to refineries in Texas City. You don't have to do that. And when there is an abundant supply of American oil being refined in those refineries, the prices come down. Because if they don't, there's no place to store the stuff. So the prices do have to come down. And that's what happened when Donald Trump took office. He said, we are going to have an energy independent America. Look at what we're doing. We've been bent over an oil barrel by Saudi Arabia for most of our lifetimes. And now we're in a situation where the country, our government, is forcing us back into that uncomfortable bent over position. And here we are. What happens when energy costs go up? Well, the cost to actually run a factory goes up. Bringing raw materials into that factory, well, that's expensive too. Makes no difference whether it's a train or whether it's a truck. It is burning what is a fact of life, which is petroleum products, crude oil, gasoline, all of it, natural gas, all of those energy sources, coal, those substances are with us forever. This idea about green new energy, it doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work. And it won't. I mean, if we're trying to use electricity for everything, that's fine, but why are we working on superconductors? Why are we making a put? I'm really concerned about fusion energy. Because essentially what that is importing a small little piece of the sun right onto the Earth's crust. Huh. Is there a crust on the sun? No, it's a giant fire. What happens? See, if a fission reactor, in other words, we just use an atomic reaction to generate heat, if that goes bad, well, we know what happens. The Fukushima nuclear power plant proved it. Chernobyl proved it. It's a mess. It's a bad thing. But if a fusion reactor goes south, that means really bad stuff. So I'm really worried about a fusion reaction right now. A physicist has not sat down. Physicists sat down and talked to me about fission reactions and so on, and I actually got a lot of that, studied it because that's what I wanted to do for a living. But fusion reactions, yeah. 3 Mile Island didn't prove it, by the way. All it proved was that the design of the Babcock and Wilcox reactors on 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, those reactors and the containment vessels and everything worked exactly the way they're supposed to. There was a small release of tritium gas from one of the reactors that worked out to be about 1/100th of a dental X-ray. Maybe. Okay, and that's an estimate. When you get down to the numbers that small, the estimates, the actual reliability of the estimates, they become really, really hard to quantify. Okay, so 3 Mile Island. No, it wasn't the government that was covering it up. By the way, it was the utility company that refused to communicate with the press. They refused to tell the press what was going on, so the press made up their own story. Okay? So their own story was not the official story or indeed what actually happened with 3 Mile Island. All right? I did a big paper on this. I followed that from a media standpoint. I understood why the media did what it did, and I absolutely laid blame at the feet of, I believe it was Edison. I can't remember. I don't have the papers with me because I didn't expect to talk about 3 Mile Island today. But let's just go ahead. No, the government wasn't covering up anything. It was, gosh, I almost had the name. Anyway, it was the electric company that screwed it up. Okay. I'll get that to you somehow. I'll give you some information. Let's get back to inflation. Highest in 41 years. All right. U.S. stocks fell sharply. While we're at it, let's go ahead and see what the stock market's been doing today. CNBC.com, which, by the way, is the very best, the very, very best NBC website. Okay, because they're dealing with money. The politics is pretty limited on CNBC. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 880 points, or 2.73%, right? 880 points. It's a pretty big drop. The S&P 500 minus 116.96, off about almost 3 points. NASDAQ took it really hard, down 414.20 points. That's 3.52%. All right. So that was pretty bad. Yes, indeed. Let's see. The president spoke today from the deck of the USS. I believe it was the Missouri. I'm not sure. Let's see what we can do about finding some of that. Let's see. Is he speaking now? Let's find out. Let's find out whether or not the president is talking. All right. Anyway, he was speaking today. I'll give you a little bit of that because the president spoke. All right. I think the actual speech is over. So let me just give you he's taking some comments from the press. Let me see.
Exxon made more money than God this year. And by the way, nothing's changed. And they're not, by the way, one thing I want to say about the oil companies. You talk about how they have 9,000 permits to drill. They're not drilling. Why aren't they drilling? Because they make more money not producing more oil. The price goes up, number one. And number two, the reason they're not drilling is they're buying back their own stock, which should be taxed, quite frankly, buying back their own stock and making no new investments. So I always thought Republicans were for investment. Exxon, start investing, start paying your taxes. Thanks.
All right. The president of the United States talking earlier today. He was in Los Angeles, and I think the Missouri is in Hawaii. So I'm trying to figure out just exactly. Let me turn this down. Trying to figure out exactly where he was today. He was on a deck of a battleship, and I did know what that was. Sorry about that. I don't have it for you. Let's see. Yeah. No, I can't find it. Anyway, let's keep moving on with this Wall Street Journal article about what's been going on. All right. So U.S. stocks fell sharply, about almost 2 3/4 points today. The yield on the benchmark 10-year Treasury note rose after the release of inflation figures. Prices for used cars and trucks, a key engine of the past year's inflation surge, rose 1.8% in May from April, reversing 3 months of declines. Shelter costs, indication of broad inflation pressures, accelerated on a monthly basis in May. They were up 5.5% compared with a year ago. Airline fares rose 12.6% on the news, the third straight double-digit rise. We expect that the formidable momentum in inflation could push the headline rate for CPI close to 9% as early as next month. Buckle your seatbelts. Once again, there's no sign of any of this changing in the foreseeable future. Are we going to have more than 10% inflation in the United States? Absolutely. Double digits, just around the corner. You're listening to the Wells Report. Back with more coming up in a moment. Isaac, you can't say that. You can't say that. Right? By the way, you're late. We already talked about this. But anyway, you don't know that. Let's see. You don't know about voter machine nonsense and voter fraud lies. You don't know because nobody ever did an investigation. You can't make that statement. All right. Sorry, man. That's just the reality. You know, you often say that you're here to keep me real. Well, I'm here to keep you real too. Let's see. Donald Trump knew he lost. No. Actually, Liz Cheney has asserted that he knew he lost. I don't think he knows he lost right now. I'm absolutely sure that he believes he won the election. I'm absolutely sure of it. His inner circle knew, or his inner circle had decided that that's where the election was going. He attempted to find an attorney general to support his lie, forced the DOJ to send a memo supporting his lie. Yeah, once again, you know, you're looking at a flawed process, and you're determining that that's true. It's not. I watched the hearings. Mike the Pillow Guy lost his suit. Well, okay, but so did everybody who tried to investigate the elections. Anything that's downstream from that is, you know, Mike lost his lawsuit based on people trying to besmirch his reputation. You know, once again, I told you this before. Any investigation would involve opening up the actual software being used in the voting machines, those Dominion voting machines. And you know, all Dominion said, well, we're going to sue everybody. And by golly, they sued everybody. And whatever happened with those lawsuits? The answer is nothing. The reason they didn't go anywhere was because in order to do that, Dominion was going to have to actually open up its operating system. And they couldn't do that. They couldn't do that. You see, because of trade secrets as to how the machines actually operate. Well, you see, there's a problem with that too. Should we actually have voting machines where the people of the United States don't know how they operate? Okay? Yeah, I am checking it out. I'm still waiting. I'm not making bold statements based on stuff that isn't real yet. Okay? You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We're talking about the news today. Another record month for inflation, now up to a 41-year high, according to the Wall Street Journal. Here's USA Today's take. Inflation unexpectedly hit a new 40-year high in May as gas, food, and rent prices surged, underscoring that its anticipated decline could be painfully slow. The Consumer Price Index increased 8.6% annually, the largest rise since December of 1981. The Labor Department said that today. Economists had predicted inflation would hold steady at 8.3%, still ridiculously too high. I mean, just damaging this nation. On a monthly basis, consumer prices increased 1% compared to a 0.3% rise in the prior months. After inflation eased off its recent four-decade high in April, economists thought it had begun a grindingly slow descent. May's return to historic levels reveals just how intractable inflation has become, as a broad range of goods and services rose sharply. And with transportation costs, manufacturing costs, energy costs going through the roof, so will inflation. The two are inextricably linked. Okay? That's it. The inflation slowdown through year end will be anything but steep. Yeah, it's not going to slow down throughout the rest of the year. Gas prices increased 4.1% and 48.7% annually in May, while grocery prices rose 1.4% and 11.9% over the past year. Russia's war in Ukraine continued to curtail global supplies of oil, wheat, corn, and other commodities and to extend supply chain troubles. That war is not that big. Supply chain is having problems for other reasons. Last month, prices rose 3.1% for cakes, cupcakes, and cookies, 2.2% for fish. Egg prices increased 5%, following a 10.3% jump in April. Chicken costs advanced 3% for the second straight month as both items surged at least partly because of recent bird flu. Core prices, which exclude volatile food and energy items, increased 0.6% for the second straight month. That lowered the annual rise to 6% from 6.2% in April. Rent climbed 0.6% and 5.2% over the past year. The sharp rise in home prices during the pandemic spurred owners to hike rents and maintain profits. The report bolsters the Federal Reserve's plans to raise key interest rates by 0.5 percentage point at both its meeting next week and the gathering in July as part of an aggressive bid to curb inflation. You know, what they're going to do is they're going to slow the economy down. Well, what does that mean? That means that we're going to have a recession. That's what that means. In order to get inflation under control, a recession is required. This report kills any last vestiges of hope that the Fed could pivot to a quarter point in July. In other words, they're going to have to raise interest rates. Stocks plunged after the report was released. We just found out 880 points today. There is good news in the latest numbers. Consumer prices have started to shift from goods to services, such as dining out and traveling, and now that the pandemic is broadly easing, that will help. Also, many port, factory, and trucking employees are coming back to work, and China is easing COVID-related lockdowns, mitigating the supply chain bottlenecks behind much of the inflation spike. Retailers that ordered too much inventory to cope with supply snarls are heavily discounting some items. As a result, prices of goods are rising more slowly or dipping in some cases, as shoppers scale back their pandemic-fueled shopping binges. Last month, prices fell 0.2% for furniture, 0.7% for appliances, and 4.1% for TVs. Used car prices, which fell prior 2 months after skyrocketing during the health crisis, jumped 1.8% and 16.1% annually. New car prices rose 1% and 12.6% yearly. That's another thing. Prices going through the roof. People aren't going to be buying cars, electric ones or otherwise. This is a mess. This is a mess. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. Okay? So that's according to USA Today. Let's talk Fox Business. Okay? Let's give you that information. And this is important information for you to know. You need to know all this stuff. And I'm giving you everybody's viewpoint. Okay? American households are confronting the steepest inflation in 4 decades, with rising consumer prices, straining worker budgets, and making it increasingly difficult for them to afford everyday necessities. The Labor Department said today the Consumer Price Index, a broad measure of price for everyday goods, including gasoline, groceries, and rents, rose 8.6% in May from a year ago. Prices jumped 1% in the 1-month period from April. Those figures were both higher than the 8.3% headline figure and the 0.7% monthly gain forecast by Refinitiv. It marks the fastest pace of inflation since December of 1981. So-called core prices, which exclude food and energy, climbed 6% from the previous year. Core prices rose 0.6% on a monthly basis, suggesting that underlying inflationary pressures remain strong. They do. Let's see. Kurt Long, the chief economist at the National Association of Federally Insured Credit Unions, said, quote, inflation surprised to the upside in May, placing more pressure on Federal Reserve policymakers. Energy was a key contributor, both as a consumer good and as an input on other areas that saw strong growth, like airfares. Price gains were strong across the board. That's right. Prices going up. And once again, energy is one of the reasons why. You're listening to the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being a part of our show. Candace Donnelly says, hi, JD. Happy Friday. Thank you very much for being here, ma'am. I sincerely appreciate it. awfully nice. Thank you. What are you going to be doing this weekend? I'm going to be working on this studio this weekend. Yeah. I have to paint things. I have to paint things. I hate painting, especially baseboards. I got to paint things. That'll be fun. Anybody ever put up track lights? You ever put up track lights in your house? Yeah, I got to do that too. You're listening to the Wells Report on Friday afternoon, which is why I'm dressed so casually. We'll be back with more coming. Oh, thank you, John. Have fun with the studio. Yeah, okay. Bite me. Back with more in just a moment. That's very funny. That is so very funny. My clock's wrong. All these music beds are playing in the wrong places. I got to fix them. I've got to fix them. I've got to fix them. Not all of them. Some of them are right. But some of them are drastically wrong. I've noticed that the top of the hour is, it's my pleasure. Don Pepper just said, thank you for serving. You must have been seeing my work with the Texas State Guard. Is that what you're talking about, Donnie? Is that what you're asking? Or is that what you're referring to? Yeah, everybody is everybody's in a border state now. Everybody. It's absolutely true. So there you go. Okay. Yes, that was a privilege. That was a privilege. I'm just glad I live in a state where I can wear the uniform of the United States and the state of Texas and serve my fellow Texans. And I feel much more fortunate, and it's just really nice. And so there you go. Anyway, thank you. Yes, James did do very, very well. We owe him a lot. James Parker, the guy who does the James Show. Yeah, we're very, very beholden to him for helping out. It was very cool. Okay, let's see. What do we got here? All right. Huh. Why is that doing that? Let's see here. Nope. I didn't do it.
Regular folks' hands, like
You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 844. It is no longer 844 anything. Okay, our new telephone number, I will just jump into it right now. Okay. Our new telephone number is 817. Write this down. Okay? Write this down. The new telephone number is 817-379-2072. Okay? Once again, that number is going to be 817-379-2072. Okay? And we'll have it working next week. Cross your fingers. So we've been talking about the 40-year inflation situation. It is incredibly high, higher than it's been in 41 years, depending on who you talk to. Fox Business host Charles Payne said the current economic crisis was created by the Federal Reserve and the Biden administration's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 rescue plan. Okay, I'm going to take some issues with this. All right. Here's the issue I'm going to take with Charles Payne on this. It wasn't the Biden administration that did that. The President of the United States signed a bill passed by the House of Representatives and the Senate. Okay? And that was just one of them. There was a whole bundle of bills that poured gigantic amounts of money into the economy. And inflation is money driven. Okay? Inflation is money driven. When there's money in the marketplace, you have too much money chasing goods, prices go up. And that is the beginning of inflation. Here's what Charles Payne said today. The experts, everyone kind of thought that maybe we'd have peak inflation in December. Then say, well, January, February, March, April, May, it's just persistent. It won't go away. They created a monster, says Charles Payne. They created a beast. The Federal Reserve pumped a lot of money into the economy, but that money doesn't really get to regular folks' hands. It helps mostly corporations. That last bit of cash that the Biden administration put in, the $1.9 trillion, paying people twice as much money to stay at home than go to work, the stimulus checks, all of that created an environment where we just went out, we spent the hell out of it, and we created this problem. Okay? That's important. And now, as much as I hesitate to do this, here is a political response by the Republican Party, the GOP, slamming Democrats for all this. House Republicans leaders, take two. House Republican leaders assailed President Biden for the Friday inflation report, showing inflation hitting a 40-year record high, accusing him of failing to address a problem that inflicts severe economic pain on average Americans. Latest inflation figures signal another painful month for Americans, said House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy in one of several statements GOP leaders provided to Fox News. McCarthy slammed Democrats for their economic record, calling it an historic disaster. The Labor Department said the Consumer Price Index, which we've reported already, hit 8.6%. They were expecting it to be 8.3%. All right. May's inflation rates mark the fastest pace of inflation since December of 1981. The White House has repeatedly blamed surging costs on Russian President Vladimir Putin and his war on Ukraine. That's not what's doing it. That is not what's doing it. It's not. President Biden and Speaker Pelosi denied economic realities for 17 months, creating raging inflation. Americans don't need to hear spin from Democrats on the economy. It is in a historic place, and Americans are starting to feel more like itself again. House Minority Whip Steve Scalise panned Democrats for staging a hearing last night on the January 6th Capitol riot. By the way, we covered that in the first hour of the Wells Report. Go check that podcast out. It's disgraceful that inflation rates just hit a new 4-decade high. Democrats are wasting time on made-for-TV political stunts. It's telling while families are struggling to afford to put food on the table and gas in their cars, the Democrats aren't devoting any primetime hearings to those issues, but instead are only focused on January 6th. Their priorities are completely out of touch with the realities facing everyday Americans. House GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik told Fox News today, "This is just the latest example of how one-party far-left rule in Washington has failed the American people. are skyrocketing inflation, historic prices for gasoline, baby formula shortages, the border crisis, surging violent crime are issues impacting Americans every day. House Republicans will address these crises when we get back in control of the House this November. The reality is that prices continue to increase at an accelerating rate. Americans are paying $5 per gallon nationally, despite President Biden tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve by 1 million barrels a day. Democrats must know that this is not the incredible transition the president pretends it is. And if it is, it's jumping the gun horrifically. President Biden is calling on people to buy electric cars. Where do you charge them? Yesterday was the day that President Biden said, well, we've got to have charging stations across the country on federal highways. They're not there yet. So in other words, all of this green new energy stuff, not ready. Not ready at all. And then, by the way, undercutting what energy we do have, what we can use, undercutting that is a recipe for economic disaster, and that's where we are. Today's report is concerning, and it signals another painful month for American workers, families, and small businesses. Shows the Democrat policies continue to push things to get worse even faster, said Kevin McCarthy. On the other side of the Capitol, Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri called on President Biden to resign if he can't get a handle on the economic crisis. Joe Biden's war on American families continue. His policies have pushed inflation to generational highs, and he still won't take any responsibility. If he can't do the job, he should step down now. Obviously, I have major issues with that statement, major disagreements, absolutely major disagreements. What are those disagreements? I do not want President Biden to resign. Why don't I want President Biden to resign? Because if President Biden resigns, the President of the United States will be Kamala Harris. No. Ronna McDaniel, the Republican National Committee chairwoman, slammed the president's administration and the Democrats, saying they don't care about the day-to-day struggles of the American people. It's shameful and it's intentional, McDaniel told Fox News. This November, do Democrats believe Americans will forget what President Biden has put them through? Probably not. Probably not. I just got a little beep on my phone. Oh, that'll be interesting. Let's see what that's all about. This from the Washington Examiner. Okay. Nielsen released preliminary ratings for last night's showing that nearly 20 million viewers tuned into the January 6th committee hearings across various channels. Several major TV networks paused their regular programming to air the hearings, which were the first of their kind to be scheduled during prime time. Most networks also streamed them on YouTube. ABC saw the most viewers, earning 4.8 million viewers. MSNBC followed with 4.1 million. NBC racked up 3.5 million. CBS garnered a viewership of 3.3 million as well. Despite not airing the hearing, Fox News saw 2.9 million views. Programs on the channel featured video coverage of the hearings alongside its hosts and guests, but no audio. While Fox News did often commentate on the hearings, some segments involved little to no mention of the January 6th. At one point, host Sean Hannity interviewed Senator Mike Lee about his recently released book, arguing against court packing on the Supreme Court. CNN came in behind Fox News. CNN did take the coverage of the hearing. They came in behind Fox News at 2.6 million viewers. Fox Business, which did air the hearing, received 223,128 viewers. Not a lot. The January 6th committee will meet again on Monday, this time at 10 a.m., and I would suggest that we won't be seeing a primetime congressional hearing again, probably forever. Probably forever. So getting back to the political backlash from the inflation numbers today, inflation has exacerbated a financial strain for millions of Americans. Core prices, including more volatile measurements of food and energy, climbed 6% from the previous year, also more than Refinitiv expected. Core prices rose 0.6% on a monthly basis, suggesting that underlying inflationary pressures remain strong. Rising inflation is eating away at strong wage gains that American workers have seen in recent months. Real average hourly earnings decreased 0.6% in May from the previous month, as the inflation increase eroded the 0.3% total wage gain. This, according to the Labor Department. On an annual basis, real earnings actually dropped 3% in May. 3%. Oh my. 3% in May. Whoa. The Biden administration in March announced it would release 1 million barrels of oil every day for the next 6 months from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserves. In an effort to combat soaring gasoline prices, it has not worked. Americans are still facing some of the highest oil prices in decades, with a national average hitting $5 a gallon. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm this week predicted a tough summer for drivers due to record high gas prices. Yeah, this summer's going to be rough, she said during an interview with CBS. I'll be honest with you. The Energy Information Administration, which is the entity that projects forward the price of gas and the price of oil, has said by the fall, it should be down to $4.27 a gallon. And by late this year, early next year, it may be down to $4, maybe under $4, maybe as low as $3 a gallon. So there is relief on the horizon, but during the summer driving season, it's going to be rough. No doubt about it, because we have such demand and a supply mismatch in the global market for oil. That, by the way, that last statement is kind of a justification for high prices. It's not actually real. It's a justification. And that's a different story. And then there's this. This, by the way, came out of Fox News as well. And, take this with a giant grain of salt. Americans at a Garden State gas station, that's New Jersey, shared their thoughts on President Biden touting the economic conditions in the U.S. during his interview with Jimmy Kimmel. Tom of New Jersey said, "I think inflation is really going to hurt the economy going forward. Doesn't seem to be stopping. Oil and gas, I don't see that mitigating, so it's going to hurt." Louise from New Jersey also said, "I do believe we grow very fast over here in the U.S., so I would agree somewhat with him." Okay. Biden's appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live marked his first network interview in 118 days. President Biden promoted the success of the economy, but said the inflation is the bane of our existence. Absolutely true. Some were unsure about the economy's success, but felt the everyday impact from rising prices. "I'm not sure how great the economy is going, but I do know inflation is very high and everybody is frustrated. Inflation rose to a 40-year record in 2022, according to the Department of Labor. Times are really tough right now. The gas price is going up. Every item when I go food shopping is 20% more post-COVID-19. During the interview with Jimmy Kimmel, President Biden took a swipe at former President Trump, teasing potential executive orders regarding abortion, and said the White House has never had a major success. It hasn't communicated. He said that the White House has had major successes. It just hasn't communicated well. Really? Only thing I can tell you is that why Jen Psaki left? Is because she's a lousy communicator? Or is it because she has lousy stuff to communicate? I wonder. So Americans, some very happy, I guess, to see the President of the United States on television doing anything. 118 days is a long time for the president to be out of sight. But all I can say is inflation is here. Prices are high. There will be a slowdown of the economy. That will mean that there will be fewer jobs based on lower profits. And that's going to stay a while. That is going to stay. Something that people need to remember. They need to understand it. For whatever it's worth. But remember, all this political stuff, it's not necessarily stuff you take to the bank. Just let it roll around in your head. Wait for further news. Let's see. Even the leftist media is now admitting in unison what a failure this administration is. Carter was a great, let me try this one more time. Carter was a great president in comparison to a presidential potted plant. Poker monkey. He's not a potted plant. President Biden is an eggplant. Don't mistake the potted plants and the eggplants. Okay? Don't do that. Just trying to help. It's going to be fewer jobs. That's true. And then, of course, Isaac Tate says when Trump left office, unemployment was 6.8%. Yeah, that's right, because the economy had been stopped by COVID-19. Trump spent $7 trillion in 4 years, and ably assisted by the Democrat House. You're listening to The Wells Report. Back in a moment. Well, right, but what I'm trying to say is that the spending of the Trump administration, the spending of the Trump administration is skewed because of COVID. And oh, by the way, the spending that Donald Trump did was not anywhere close to the spending that Joe Biden did. Joe Biden has been in office less than 2 years. He's already spent $6.8 trillion. I mean, there's more of this money that's going to flood into the United States. This is just the beginning, man. Hold on. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is going to be 817-379-2072. That's the new number. So we got to figure that out, okay? Yeah. And that's what we're going to be doing. So you'll be able to call the show and you'll be able to talk to me live, and that will be very good, and I can hardly wait. This is something interesting. I thought you'd like to hear about this. For people that buy incredibly expensive educations for their children, they often are lavished with tales about how kids with conservative political viewpoints find themselves in a position where they're graded down, which, oh, by the way, affects their professional endeavors moving forward. So in other words, if you spew the party line in a college, you'll get higher grades than people who don't. So the problem comes in that essentially what's going on is college is turning into essentially a factory for leftist liberal thought. Now, it's been doing that for a while, but you could still get an education unless, of course, you decided to talk about your particular political ideology in a college campus. And then you started getting bad grades. A Christian art student is suing an Illinois college, claiming the school censored her conservative views after complaints from classmates. Quote, I was alarmed when I received 3 no-contact orders that prevented me from having direct or indirect communication with these 3 students. Essentially, they were restraining orders that applied to on- and off-campus activities. This is according to Maggie DeJong earlier today on Fox News. She said that the University of Southern Illinois, the university at Edwardsville, she routinely participated in classroom discussions on contentious issues such as race relations and religion, often expressing a conservative viewpoint. Near the end of her 3-year graduate program, she was hit with a no-contact order pertaining to 3 of her classmates who objected to her social media posts on abortion and the police. DeJong never violated any university policy, yet the university issued no-contact orders against her, prohibiting her from fully participating in classes, including discussions about race relations and the police, simply because they deemed her beliefs unwelcome. DeJong angered fellow classmates by defending Kyle Rittenhouse on social media and denouncing critical race theory. Students demanded she remove her pro-police hat in class, calling it a symbol of oppression. Universities cannot issue no-contact orders and tell students they can't speak with other students simply for protecting their views. So she is suing the University of Southern Illinois. That's going to be expensive. She's going to win. Now, will this be a cooling of leftist professors indoctrinating their students? Probably not. But it will cost some money to some people. And so I think that's probably a good thing all told and in general. While we're on the subject of young Americans, this I put little headings above the articles that I use on the broadcast, and this one was Nunya, as in Nunya business. All right. Let me just read this, and you can think of it as you will. When Archie Crowley, a transgender and non-binary doctoral student at the University of South Carolina, was in the process of discovering themselves as a decade ago. Archie Crowley, a transgender and non-binary doctoral student, discovering themselves. That's the preferred pronoun, as opposed to him or herself. It's themself. It actually should be themself, not themselves, because he's... Okay, wait a minute. Archie Crowley. He's only one guy. Anyway, when he was discovering themselves, one of the first sources of information they looked at was transgender people sharing their experiences on YouTube. Now people younger than me are pointing to TikTok and Instagram. Crowley serves as a facilitator for a Midlands area transgender support in Columbia. People are able to create and put out their own stories, whereas before, the only way we would find out information was through other media gatekeepers. You know, sort of like what Facebook does with conservatives. Crowley is among the estimated 5% of young adults who identify now as transgender or non-binary, the highest number ever recorded. How many years have we been recording this? By the way, this accounts for 1.6% of the U.S. adult population. 1.6%. From a percentage standpoint, how much news coverage do they get? Is it 1.6% of the news coverage? Seems much higher to me. I could be wrong. Just thought I'd let you know. You are listening to The Wells Report. I am John David Wells, going through today's news, analyzing the news for fact, reporting the facts and the news, drawing the contrast between the two. And we'll continue that for another hour here on Friday afternoon on The Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us. Make sure you like the page you're watching and make sure you share it with your friends. Back with more coming up in just a couple of moments on the Friday edition of The Wells Report. I'll be right back, guys. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is going to be 817-379-1754. All right, there you go. That's going to happen next week. You'll be able to call this broadcast at your leisure. So, it's been a while since we've spent some time talking about what's going on down at the border. As you know, I have been, for the last 8 months or so, ending in May, I have been serving on the border with the Texas Military Department as a proud member of the Texas State Guard. None of the things that I say from an opinion standpoint have anything to do with the Texas Military Department or the Texas State Guard. These are my thoughts and my thoughts alone. I'm completely responsible for what I'm saying, not the Texas Military Department. So when we touch on this particular kind of news material, I want you to understand that I'm coming at it from a standpoint. Oh, thank you. Anhoy Guzman just noticed that I'm wearing shorts. See, while I was down on the border, I was able to do something that I hadn't done in a very long time. What is that, you might ask? Well, I was able to tan my legs. So my legs, as opposed to the fine, rather hairy alabaster that they used to be in, are somewhat more tan now. So I can actually wear shorts, and I kind of do have nice gams. See that? That's really a nice leg there. Solid. Got solid legs. But it's Friday, and yeah, I decided I'd wear shorts today. So I'm glad you like the gams there, Ann. I hope that helped. As I was saying, haven't spent a lot of time talking about the border. And the reason I haven't is because, well, there hasn't been a lot of news. The Texas-Mexico border, the soldiers down there have done amazing work. It is humanitarian. It is work that helps not just the people of, and the people of Texas and the people of the United States. It doesn't just help Texas for us to close, for all intents and purposes, close the Texas border. It helps every state in the union. Every state now is a border state. A huge influx of illegal immigration is occurring. It's making its way through Mexico. It will be on the border very soon. The people that come to the Texas border will find dramatically less success getting across that border and into the United States. Mostly. More about that coming up in a minute. People focus on the actual population change of the United States. So far, during the Biden administration, enough illegal immigrants have made it into the United States to overwhelm the population of many states. Don Pepper, for example, is listening to the broadcast. Now, Davenport, I'll get to that in just a minute. Really, Arthur? Anyway, oh, stop it, Isaac. Let's keep going. The actual population of people who have made it into the United States and do not hold legal sanction to be here overwhelm the populations of many states in the union. Just let that sink in for a minute. You know, when all this stuff started before the Trump administration we heard from the Obama administration that these people were coming to do work that Americans wouldn't do. Same thing with the Bush administration. That's not what they're coming for. They're coming here to cast votes Americans won't cast. Because there's exactly one country in the world that doesn't have a totalitarian background. Yeah, that would be the United States. Every other population on Earth has either lived through a totalitarian regime or is living with a totalitarian regime, except in the United States. So when you start talking about all these people coming into the United States, it's a real problem. They're not coming through Texas. Because Governor Abbott said if the federal government of the United States, which is charged by the Constitution of the United States to maintain strong, secure borders, if they won't do it, we'll do it ourselves. Texas, being an economic powerhouse, can do something like that. And I was proud to have a part of that mission. But what people forget, just from the population thing, is the depravity that is occurring on that border. Human smuggling, bringing people into the United States. It might surprise you to know one of the biggest smugglers of illegal immigration into the United States. It might surprise you to find out who that is. We'll have that for you in just a minute. But human smuggling, the depravity of human trafficking, that's where people from Central America and elsewhere around the world are brought into the United States to be sex toys. That is heartbreaking. Children, women, yes, men. Yeah. There's not a lot of discrimination going on about sex trafficking and sexual abuse and sexual assault and rape and all of that on the southern side of the border with these cartel guys that are running these people into our nation. The drugs, you've heard plenty about. Before we stopped the influx of illegal drugs or have curtailed it dramatically, before we did that in Texas, enough illegal drugs had crossed the border into Texas from a standpoint of fentanyl and other drugs to kill every man, woman, and child in the United States. It's one of the reasons why Governor Abbott acted to close the Texas border. The Department of Homeland Security said today that stepped up efforts to target cartels that control migrant smuggling into the United States through the U.S.-Mexico border are paying off. As many as 900 people a day are derailed from their plans to cross. Slammed by record border chaos, the department in recent months has announced operations to disrupt cartel finances and to increase investigations and prosecutions of smugglers. The result is more than 30,000 law enforcement actions aimed at smuggling operations in Latin America, with some 2,000 smugglers arrested over 8 weeks. Officials say that smugglers have had to adapt. They change routes to smuggle humans. They shift stash house locations away from the border to avoid raids. They increase prices for smuggling, no longer guarantee passage at the border. That's what's going on. Now, let's talk about what happens when they get here. This, according to National Review. For months now, the Biden administration has been taking migrants from border facilities in Texas and Arizona. Funny they don't mention California. They've been taking migrants from border facilities in Texas and Arizona and flying them to airports throughout the United States interior. From there, they are transported on buses to communities across the country. The New York Post has reported that this is being conducted in the dead of the night, on an almost nightly basis, by federal government contractors on the taxpayer dime. This is completely true. And this, by the way, this news came from National Review at 6:30 this morning. Most of the migrants are Hispanic men in their late teens or early 20s. Some of the illegal immigrants have criminal records. Their records are for assault, drunk driving, drug possession. It is a shameful circumvention of the rule of law under Section 1325 of Title 8 in the U.S. Code, which prohibits improper entry into the United States by an alien, and an enormous political scandal that should be receiving more media attention. Remember, this is National Review. This is biased reporting. In January, breaking security protocols, the clandestine charter flights flew into an airport in New York's Westchester County. The Department of Homeland Security did not even bother to alert the local police, which came in after the airport curfew. This has been happening for almost a year. The New York Post reports that as early as August 8th, 2021, those charter planes were flying in migrants from airports in El Paso, McAllen, Houston, among other places. Aboard the flights were 12 employees of MVM Incorporated, a private security company that had been a federal government contractor for the CIA and NSA in Iraq. This, according to the Post. The Biden administration is paying MVM Incorporated $136 million to transport the migrants. Biden froze funding of the border wall in the first few months in office, yet he is spending taxpayer dollars to transport illegal immigrants to destinations inside the United States. Think about that for a moment. The current president is spending $136 million just to the organization who's doing the work. Airfare, food, support, that's extra. $136 million to transport the migrants. So arguably, everybody curses the cartels for their smuggling of human beings across the border into the United States. Why isn't anybody talking about the smuggling that's going on after they get here? Why are the smugglers always identified as cartel personnel when it looks to me that a lot of the smuggling that's going on is being done by the President of the United States and his administration? Nobody's talking about that. Why aren't they? Because they don't want to. They know they're doing something wrong. That's why all these flights are happening in the middle of the night. This is truly awful. And it is happening right now. You're saying, well, you know, John David, the criminal records, I mean, think about it. Assault, I mean, really? Drunk driving? All that stuff? Well, there are frank implications for all that, too. Let's talk a little bit about this particular story in Florida. An illegal immigrant in Florida just committed a hit and run automobile crash. Happened in Polk County, Florida. The man has been arrested. We'll tell you more about it in just a couple of moments. We'll also tell you what happened as a result of this automobile accident. So, one of the biggest smugglers of illegal aliens in the United States is the Biden administration. Why hasn't anybody brought that up? You know, we arrest people who smuggle aliens around the country. Why aren't we at least looking at this? This is the Wells Report. Okay. Arthur Davenport, you have not been blinded. Okay? My legs are not that white. Now, wait a second, Kelly. My legs are tan. Those are Those are beautiful legs. Just ask Ann. Yeah. Above the knee, they are pristine white. Well, okay, that's the alabaster I was talking about a second ago. Okay, here we go. Okay. Yeah. Cleo says I look very fit since I came back. Yes, I lost okay, I lost a lot of weight. I lost a lot of weight, okay? And I'm still losing. I'm still slimming down, okay? Isaac Tate, is it over yet? My eyes. Really? Those are nice legs. Stop it. Wow. Goodness sakes. Let's see what else is going on in this chat room. It's not actually an invasion. It's not. Let's see. State propaganda piece. Okay. Well. Wow. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We're trying to have a serious conversation, and all the people in the chat room want to know is where do I go when there's time being allowed for commercials? I'm not going to tell you. I take technical breaks for various reasons. Technical breaks. Okay, I'm not going to go into one of the technical breaks. One of the other technical breaks is that I have lost a lot of weight. I do a lot of exercise, and that pushes my blood sugar level down to the point where it's a problem. Okay. In other words, there are a lot of people that deal with some form of diabetes, okay, where your body doesn't process sugar. Mine processes sugar too much. And so I'm hypoglycemic. And because I'm not eating a lot of food, I can have hypoglycemic episodes. It's you get shaky, you get dizzy, you start to sweat profusely. I haven't had any of those problems, but when I feel it coming on, you can get drowsy. When you feel it coming on, what I do is I go down and I'll have a couple of pieces of apple or a little swig of chocolate milk or something like that to keep my blood sugar. I keep my blood sugar where it needs to be, so I can get through everything. It's been really, really good since I've been jumping all over this. I've been really working on it, so it's made my life a lot better. So since losing weight and all that kind of stuff, I've been feeling very much more healthy. So that's when I do go. Sooner or later, you'll have something to watch so that I can have some reasonable privacy, and I can take my technical breaks. and do my thing. All right. So we're talking about illegal immigration into the United States. And we're talking about those evil human smugglers that bring people to the United States, some of them terrorists, some of them on the terrorist watch group. The terrorist watch list? Yeah. Yeah, these people smuggle them in, but what happens after that? Well, they're smuggled around the country by the Biden administration, spending hundreds of millions of dollars to do it. They don't contact the local authorities. They just inflict illegal immigrants into the nation in various cities around the country. That is against the law, which makes the Biden administration one of the biggest smugglers of illegal immigrants anywhere in the world. I mean, you can't very well curse a cartel for smuggling people into the United States when as soon as they get here, they're smuggled around the United States by our own government. It's absolutely outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Nobody talks about it. And yeah, there are a bunch of people that come here that are not just illegal immigrants, but oh, by the way, they're also criminals. Assault, violent crime, but it's assault. I mean, you know. But drunk driving is somewhat different because it has much more devastating effects. The Polk County Sheriff's Office arrested a man illegally living in the United States 24 hours after causing a multi-car crash that killed another motorist. Eddie Juarez Granados, 46 years old, was arrested at his home on charges related to fleeing the scene of a fatal crash. Juarez Granados admitted to police he was involved in the traffic accident. Authorities recovered dash cam footage that showed Juarez Granados losing control of his vehicle. His Nissan spun out across the median into the oncoming lane. His car collided with a 2006 Infiniti being driven by Tyler Baisden, 21 years of age, of Jacksonville, North Carolina. Dashcam video from the commercial dump truck, as well as other evidence and witness statements, showed that Juarez Granados lost control of his Nissan truck during a light rain while driving northbound on US 17 south of the intersection with County Road 640. The Infiniti then collided with two other vehicles, and Juarez Granados subsequently drove away from the scene. His vehicle crossed over the median while rotating counterclockwise, entered the southbound lane. His truck struck Mr. Baisden's Infiniti, causing it to lose control, cross over into the northbound lane. Juarez Granados is charged with several crimes, including leaving the scene of a fatal crash and driving without a valid driver's license. Because of his illegal migration into the U.S., Immigration and Customs Enforcement has been notified. From the beginning of the investigation, our detectives and crime analysts did a fantastic job locating the suspect and vehicle so quickly. The suspect had no valid license, was in the country illegally. He should not have been driving in Florida because he was. An innocent person is dead. An innocent person is dead. This is my cousin Lizanne. Hi, Lizanne. How are you? She just hung up. She must have been shocked by my white legs as well. Arg. Oh, well, there you go. So once again, human smuggling. Was this guy down at the border? Was this Granados man, was he down at the border? Did he get sent to Florida on one of these flights? We know it's possible, but is it actually going to happen? I don't know. Are we actually going to find out whether or not this guy was down at one of those border stations and then smuggled into Florida by the Biden administration? Like I said, we know this is happening. This is pretty bad, huh? Yeah, this is pretty awful. What are we, the people, going to do about it? Well, we've got an election coming up. We had better vote wisely. And we'd also better, by gosh, get control of our elections as well. What are we going to do? We better be better Americans. That's what we better do. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. Yeah, if it can be proven this man was smuggled by the Biden administration, the lawsuits are going to be epic. All right, hold on a minute. Don't go to... My cousin Lizanne called. How nice. Strong like bull. Yes. Strong like bull. Yes. I am strong like bull. Bull. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic? Pretty damn impressive for an old guy. Pretty damn impressive for an old guy. Pretty damn impressive for an old guy. You are listening to the Wells Report for Friday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I get to make a speech tomorrow. I do. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to head to Rockwall to address a group down there. And by the way, if you would like me to show up at one of your gatherings to make a speech, please let me know. We are going to have more ways of doing that in the near future because I'm planning on getting out and speaking. A lot of it is going to be about what and this is tomorrow's talk. I'm going to be talking about what happened on the border of the United States while I was there. And so we'll be doing that. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and thanks very much for spending these last hours of the workday here with the Wells Report. Last night, there was an epic extravaganza of partisan politics. It was the January 6th primetime hearing. It was a made-for-TV event. It was disappointing. It was disappointing, and it was dangerous and deleterious to this country. It was unfortunate at every level, and I certainly hope we don't see more of it. Leni Riefenstahl used to do the black and white films for the Nazi regime in the late 30s for Adolf Hitler. It reminded me of that. There was not even any kind of willingness to entertain the arguments of the other side. It was a completely partisan affair. And it was immediately gathered up and broadcast everywhere by a biased media. When you combine governmental action with a biased media, you get propaganda. Thus the allusion to Leni Riefenstahl. In that hearing last night, they talked about the Oath Keepers, and they talked about the Proud Boys, calling them domestic terrorists. Now, I've looked around for this. I mean, those guys have been on the radar for a while. You know, Oath Keepers basically are groups of soldiers, first responders that essentially continue to focus on the oaths they took when they became police officers, which includes protecting and defending the Constitution of the United States. That's the oath they keep. Isn't it interesting that a government would have a problem with a group that purports to follow the Constitution? The Proud Boys? Well, whatever. The Proud Boys. Are they domestic terrorists? I don't know. If they are, what about Black Lives Matter? See, I can't find any video of the Proud Boys burning down anything. Can't find any video of the Proud Boys looting anywhere. I can't find any video of either the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers doing any of those things. And I can't find video of the Proud Boys beating an old woman in front of her business with a 2x4. I can't find video of the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers blinding police officers with lasers, firing fireworks at them, setting fire to federal buildings. Can't find any of that video. And yet, Black Lives Matter they were involved in social justice demonstrations. It was peaceful protesting. And then there's another group that didn't get mentioned at all, even though they were a party to an attempted assassination of a Supreme Court Associate Justice, Brett Kavanaugh. Ruth sent us. Are they a domestic terror group? Maybe. And why do I say that? Pro-choice group Ruth sent us. It has been learned that they have hinted at targeting protests at Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett. This after the attempted assassination of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Ruth Sent Us posted a call for demonstrations at Amy Coney Barrett's home and her church in response to speculation that she will concur with a previously leaked draft court opinion that would overturn Roe v. Wade. A Department of Homeland Security report said the Supreme Court draft opinion has unleashed a wave of threats against officials and others and increased the likelihood of extremist violence. If you're in the D.C. metro area, join us. Our protests at Barrett's home move the needle to this coverage. Ruth Sent Us specifically noted the Barrett family's daily schedule and also the name of the school her children attend. So now they're buying into family violence as well. They wrote, Falls Church is a People of Praise stronghold. She sends her 7 kids to a People of Praise school that she sat on the board of directors for. She attends church daily. So what she's doing is she's calling for not just protesters, but attackers. Not just against Amy Coney Barrett, but her children as well. Ruth Sent Us. Is Ruth Sent Us a domestic terrorist outfit? You know, it's beginning to look a lot like that to me. The tweet was posted on the morning of June 8th, after the early morning arrest of Nicholas John Roski, the would-be assassin of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Roski of Simi Valley, as you know, was carrying a gun, ammunition, a knife, pepper spray, screwdriver, zip ties, wrecking bar, when arrested by the Montgomery County Police Department. So now what we have is this. We have Ruth Sent Us publicizing the daily routine of a Supreme Court justice and the daily routine of her children. That's against the law right there. It wouldn't be very difficult to say that that is an attempted intimidation of a federal judge. There should be more to do about that. There should be more law to bring prosecutions against people involved in Ruth Sent Us. Don't you think? So Isaac has been kind enough to give me U.S. Code 2331. It is against the law to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion, or to affect the government of a conduct by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping. I'm sure he's talking about this guy that tried to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh. But what about the people that are trying to egg on a possible assassination of Amy Coney Barrett or her children? What about that? What about that? Well, there ought to be a law. Yeah, I think you're right. There ought to be a law. As a matter of fact, there is one. And there's a law in the pipeline. According to Politico today, the House will not vote today on a Senate-approved plan to increase security for Supreme Court justices' families amid partisan disagreements over whether those protections should extend to other employees of the High Court. Senior Democrats are scrambling to nail down an agreement on the bill, which took on fresh urgency after police arrested an armed man making death threats outside Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home. Now, this is Politico that's put this out there, so it's biased coverage. So it doesn't actually describe what this guy was trying to do. Here's what it should have read. Senate Democrats are trying to come down with some sort of an agreement, which took on fresh urgency after police arrested an armed man, admitting to being there to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh. He wasn't an armed man making death threats. He was on a mission to assassinate a sitting United States Supreme Court Associate Justice. But I guess that level of precision is above the pay grade of Politico. Unbelievable. Then they go on to say Senate GOP leaders have rejected proposed language from House Democrats who argue that other employees, such as court clerks, should have similar protections. No, they shouldn't. This is a delaying tactic. This law should have been passed weeks ago. The Senate has already passed it unanimously. What is the House doing? I'll tell you what the House is doing. They're setting up Supreme Court justices for mayhem. That's what they're doing. And they're doing it over the Roe v. Wade decision. That's what they're doing. And the thugs that they send out to try to coerce the government against the law, to coerce and intimidate justices and so on, that law on the books not being enforced, which is another problem. It's not being enforced. Therefore, these people are wandering around in front of these justices' homes willy-nilly. There needs to be a law that protects the Supreme Court justices and their families. Not the conservative ones, not the liberal ones, all of them. And that law is being held up by Nancy Pelosi. They're not going to vote this week. They haven't voted this week. Are they going to vote next week? They, by God, better. Because you know what it looks like to me? It kind of sort of looks like to me that Nancy Pelosi and a lot of Democrats are perfectly willing to lose a Supreme Court justice or two. Because after, of course, the nationwide mourning of the loss of Supreme Court justices, Joe Biden would be able to appoint 2 more. So it's okay if some of these justices die. That's the way it looks. Do I believe that's the case? You know what? I can't say no. I can't say that that's absolutely not the case. It's preposterous to even bring it up. I can't say that. You know why? Because the Democrats have a long-term, long-lasting, committed to policy of not enforcing law based on political considerations. They have also refused to prosecute crimes that led to the deaths of federal agents. They've allowed crimes to happen. The Black Lives Matter riots. People died during those. Hundreds of billions of property of dollars worth of property damage. People crippled. And the people running the cities where all that stuff was happening didn't lift a finger. Why? Because they were trying to create chaos in the nation that they could somehow hold Donald Trump responsible for. So when the left isn't getting its way, they send out the thugs, like the people with Ruth sent us, who goes ahead and publishes the daily routine of a Supreme Court Associate Justice, Amy Coney Barrett. You see, if Brett Kavanaugh gets assassinated, well, well, that really doesn't change the court. But you get two of them assassinated. We get rid of Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh, and we get two people like Merrick Garland to be in the Supreme Court of the United States, and we don't have to worry about passing another law. We'll just throw everything into federal court. We'll create lawsuits, and we'll do just like we did with Roe v. Wade, which is have the judicial branch of government not just making law, but concocting a constitutional amendment granting a right that does not exist. That's what we'll do. Now, do I think that's actually happening? No, I don't think so. Is it possible that it's happening? Yeah. That's exactly right. It's possible that's exactly what's happening. Can you imagine? What if that's the political calculation all over? What if that's actually it? Nah. Yeah. You're listening to the Wells Report. I'll just let you think about that one. Back with more in just a moment. You see, this is interesting. I'm watching Isaac and Cleo interacting, which is a nice conversation, as long as it doesn't get trollish, Isaac. Anyway, what I wanted to say was, what I'm trying to say here is Cleo, Isaac said that Cleo's opinions are in the minority, especially when women are polled. Well, that's because they're asking the wrong question. Cleo is asking for women to control their fertility and be an adult. If you want to, if no one's going to tell you what you can do with your body, if you are the sole proprietor of your body and if you're responsible for your body, then be responsible with your body. Okay? That's what Cleo is saying. And I got to be honest with you, Isaac, she's not in the minority. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I want to thank you very much for being a part of our broadcast today. It's Friday. When this one's done, we get to get a couple of days rest and then get back at it on Monday. And that is exactly what this broadcast is going to do. Isaac, don't go there. Okay? Don't go there. I'm talking about a friend of mine, and he is a friend of mine. He truly is. But don't make the same mistake twice, Isaac. Don't do it. Okay? You're listening to the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. There was something else I wanted to talk a little bit about, and this is something that I'm stunned by. And I think you will be too. Someone, please, by all means, Someone please explain why this is anywhere close to real. The insurance company Geico, with the cute little gecko. Geico has been ordered to pay $5.2 million in damages to a woman who contracted a sexually transmitted disease in the insured vehicle of her then boyfriend. On Tuesday of this week, the Missouri Court of Appeals Western District published an opinion in favor of the woman, identified as M.O., who alleged that she contracted HPV during a sexual encounter in the insured vehicle's car in 2017. HPV is human papillomavirus. It can spread through direct sexual contact and cause warts in important and personal areas. Insured negligently caused or contributed to cause MO to be infected with HPV by not taking proper precautions and neglecting to inform and or disclose his diagnosis, despite having knowledge of his condition. MO asserted her then boyfriend's car insurance policy covered her injuries and losses in a claim in 2021. Geico turned those claims down. She took matters to an arbitrator who found the insured negligently infected MO with HPV and awarded her $5.2 million in damages. She then filed a motion with the trial court, who ruled in her favor and confirmed the judgment of $5.2 million in damages for past and future medical expenses, as well as past and future mental and physical pain and suffering. Geico appealed the judgment, claiming they were not given, quote, meaningful opportunity to defend their interests, unquote. But Geico did have the opportunity to participate and defend its interests, including the ability to challenge liability and damages by entering a defense of the insured. But they didn't do that because that's expensive. Okay. USA Today reached out to attorneys for both Geico and the woman. They did not immediately hear back. The appeals court found that Geico did not have the right to relitigate the issues after the award had been affirmed. Oh, no. In a statement to CBS Money Watch, Geico said, the question of whether there is coverage for this matter will be determined by a federal lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Missouri. I am reasonably sure that the $5.2 million settlement will be set aside at that point. I'm just almost positive of it. I'm truly almost positive of it. Yeah, you see, I had that particular endeavor tested once in my life, and I assured myself and anyone who had, say, for example, had liaised with myself, in other words, gone on a date with me, that there would be no activity of that kind in my car or any car, because I don't have dates in cars. Cars and dates are for transportation to a place for fun, frivolity, entertainment, and perhaps debauchery. But cars themselves, nah. No. Absolutely not. Never. Never to be even considered again. This is why. Can you imagine what the disclaimers are going to look like from insurance companies moving forward? And oh, by the way, what if you decide to, what if Geico, say, for example, comes up with, say, for example, an extra charge to have anti-HPV insurance? Would that be called an insurance rider? Rider? I don't even know her. Geico. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You are listening and have been listening to the Wells Report for this week. Almost every show worked out fine, except for a dumb move on my part on, I guess it was Wednesday. We'll see you next week. Take good care, and thank you for watching the Wells Report. All right, beloveds. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Yeah. Take good care. God bless all y'all, okay?